Hello, you have reached Miss Blossom for Beauty to Behold. Welcome to our airtime together. It's truly a blessing to be on the air and to share with you my experience, strength, and hope. What I wanted to share with you today is the contracts in my head. And I wanted to share briefly of my own experience, strength, and hope in this particular area for those that are listening today. You know, the beauty that's within me and the beauty that's within you comes from us learning about ourselves and being true to ourselves. And one of the things that I have found in my experience is that I oftentimes actually make my own contracts based on my belief system and what I perceive to be true for me. But what I have found is oftentimes my perception has been distorted based on how I was raised, the environment I was in, and also because I was one that would like to try to keep myself safe or keep myself from being hurt or abused or mistreated. And so I began to create my own contracts. And when we think about a contract, we think about an agreement that is made between two people of whatever has been discussed and agreed upon. But, you know, I've heard it often said that we seem to have a panel already of voices in our heads. And I believe that there is voices that do speak to us. And I believe one is our God, the God of my understanding, who's Jehovah Jireh, the Lord of my provider, who is God. And there is another voice that speaks to me that it seems to always want to pull me in the wrong direction, which to me is another entity or an evil spirit. And so what I have found is that when I don't know what to do and my contact with God is not as strong and I'm not really meditating and spending time there where I know I can hear better and be more clear, I will create contracts in my head based on my perception. And oftentimes, as the time passes, I find that my contracts are not really valid, which causes me to stumble. And then I find out that, that there is another way. And sometimes I really have to get to the point where I have to begin to really look at me and where I may be feeling unsafe, feeling insecure. Maybe I need to please somebody today, whatever the case might be. Maybe I'm feeling the lack of something. And so I contract these desires within me so I can feel validated. And what ends up happening is I really end up hurting myself. A great example that I can use concerning my own personal life is the perceptions of others. You know, the way I was raised and my perception of how I was received and loved, I had this contract created in my head and I became my own judge and jury that unless I did something for you, you would not do anything for me or love me back. So this was a contract I made with myself that unless I did something for you, that you would not love me. And so until that was clear through doing some work, looking at my part, did I realize I had a contract that I had made with myself about how to be treated by others. Well, I did not have any hope at the time, but as I began to focus on learn about myself and the contracts that I had made about myself and others, I have found that I had locked myself in and made myself a prisoner of my own mind. So I began to work through some steps. And one of the steps on the principles of the program of recovery is admitted my own doing, admitted where I was wrong, came to believe. Well, that's because I do believe, and that God of my understanding is where I rest in and who I believe in, that guides my steps. And what I began to do is start looking at the areas that I had made contracts with myself. And so I had to begin to surrender those things, those thoughts, those obsessions that I had in order for me to begin to enjoy the life that was before me. And so when I began to realize that these contracts that I created for myself was really a safety factor, which made me an enemy really to myself, I began to lay those things down. And I must say that it was a little fearful because what would happen if I didn't have these contracts in place, these thought patterns in place? What would happen to me? And what I realized there was a fear of rejection, there was a fear that I wouldn't be loved if I didn't do these things. And I found that when I began to lay them down and to begin to surrender my thoughts, my contracts in my head, I began to realize that life was not as bad as I had perceived it to be, and that people would love me without the contracts that I had in place. I must admit it was very fearful because people that I had grown to love had always abused me in some form or fashion. And the truth is, that's all I knew. But as I began to lay down the desires of my heart to keep myself safe, I began to really allow myself to just be and learn to accept people as they are, to accept them where they're at, and take a risk. And so in the years of recovery, I have found that there are going to be risks that I have to take to learn about the me that lives inside, the beauty of the me that has never been able to really shine. And so the beauty to behold is really to allow the real you to shine without fear and to just be your genuine self. And that was the part that I was always afraid to allow others to see. And so I created these contracts within my mind to know that if I did these things, that people would love me just the way I am. But I didn't need people to love me the way I am. I just needed to learn to love me the way I was, if that makes any sense. And so it was a process, and it is a continued process for me to take a look at areas that I'm critical about in myself and being able to lay those things down and take a risk of being my genuine self. And so the hope that I have today that I want to share with you is this, that I do have hope because I have worked on a lot of my character issues that has really been a deterrent for me and has hurt me because I have been my own worst enemy. But the hope that I want to share with you is the promises that have been given to me, I'm actually living those today. Not always perfectly, but one day at a time. And so I want to encourage you that have these contracts, that have made your own courtroom and have put down your own gavel concerning what you're going to do and what you're not going to do concerning you, that it's time for you to reevaluate those contracts that you have made and the risks that and the willingness of that risk that you can take to be your genuine self and be able to really be free in you. And so I encourage you to take it one moment at a time. Please find someone that can be a mentor or sponsor to you. Pick up that phone and make a call and let someone know where you're at. It takes work. I got to tell you, as much as I sometimes don't want to pick up that phone, I know that I need to because it is part of my lifeline, not just in meditation and prayer, but it's also in connecting with someone else and letting them hear what's going on in my head. Because sometimes my perception of life is not accurate. And so I have learned from walking one day at a time that as I search out and take a risk and being willing, because not every day I'm willing, but I have a willingness to be willing, or I ask God to give me the willingness to be willing so I can walk and to learn about the true, genuine me, the way I was created to be. And I find that each day as I take that risk, and sometimes it may take longer than a couple of days, it may take weeks, but I'm willing. There was a time that I was not willing at all. You couldn't even budge me. But I began to seek the promises that were given to me. And mind you, I've been around in the rooms and in recovery for many, many years. And I have found it really does work. Not only has it brought me a greater foundation in the God of my understanding that I love dearly, but it has allowed me to build friendships and to not look at my contracts anymore, because now I can see them for what they were and how they were good for a season when I needed to safeguard myself. But now they have no use for me because they keep me in bondage to myself. About a week ago, or maybe a week or two ago, I was talking about casting stones at ourselves. A lot of times we tend to cast stones at others and what they're doing to us, but we tend to forget to look at the stones that we cast at ourselves. And those stones are like those contracts. We are more critical about what we think we need when we really have no really understanding of what we need because we have not taken a risk to step out to learn about the real us. And so I just want to encourage you today. Today is your day to begin to look at you and to love you for who you are. And look at the beauty that's underneath that beautiful diamond that's been covered in soot, that's been covered in pain, that's been covered in rejection. It's time for you to break free and be the real you, the way you've been created to be. Don't you want to fly? Don't you want to be free? Don't you want to just experience life and be able to have joy? You know, I didn't even know what joy was. Today I can tell you I know what joy is. And that is because what was underneath all that stuff was jewels that were in my vessel that now I can really truly be free in. So whenever I start getting in a bad place and I hear myself creating my own contracts again, I know I'm in trouble because I have decided to make my own rules to safeguard myself. And that's a sign to me that there's something going on with me that needs to be looked at. So anyways, if you have any questions and you'd like to connect with me, please feel free to do so at wosa0326@gmail.com. We're having our second, I think, Beauty to Behold gathering at the Serenity Center in Columbia, Maryland, if you'd like to come. This is a women's recovery program for women that would like to come. We're hoping the men will have one also. But my desire is to embrace everyone in recovery, but deal with certain issues that sometimes beset us. So anyways, may you have a wonderful day. Remember, you have beauty, and you are truly a beauty to behold. God bless you. Bye-bye.